Welcome back to Silent Stories Updates, where we share true to life stories that touch your heart, challenge your emotions, and remind us of what really matters in life. Today's story is about a man who bought a mountain home to fix up and start over, only to find that another family had moved in, claiming it was theirs. What followed was not just a legal fight, but a journey that changed everyone involved. The story begins with Daniel Harris. For most of his life, Daniel had lived in the city. After years of stress, heartbreak, and exhaustion, he decided it was time to start over. His marriage had ended, his job felt empty, and he wanted peace. So, he did something bold. He sold nearly everything he owned and started searching for a home in the mountains. Somewhere quiet, surrounded by trees and silence. After weeks of searching online, he found it, a small, rundown house nestled in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The roof sagged, the paint had faded, and the porch leaned dangerously to one side. But there was something about it. It felt like hope. Daniel bought it through a foreclosure auction. The process was quick, clean, and legal. The bank handed him the deed, and just like that, the mountain home was his. When he got the keys, he felt like he was finally free from noise, from pressure, from everything that had gone wrong. He packed up his tools and drove into the mountains on a foggy morning. The gravel crunched beneath his tires as the cabin came into view. The scent of pine filled the air. The home looked old and tired, but to Daniel, it was perfect. He stepped out of his truck, smiled, and whispered, "Home," for 2 peaceful weeks. Daniel worked on repairs. He replaced broken windows, scrubbed mold from the walls, and fixed the creaky stairs. He imagined the final picture, a cozy retreat with a fireplace, a big deck, and warm lights spilling out the windows at night. For the first time in years, Daniel was excited about the future. But that peace shattered one afternoon when he came home from town. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed something strange. Another car parked beside the house. A blue sedan. The front door was open. Curtains fluttered in the window that hadn't been there that morning. Confused, Daniel climbed out of his truck and froze when he heard voices inside. He stepped onto the porch and pushed the door open. His stomach dropped. There, in the living room, stood a woman unpacking boxes. A man carried a suitcase up the stairs. 2 teenagers were laughing in the hallway. "Excuse me," Daniel said, trying to stay calm. "What are you doing in my house?" The woman turned, her face tightening. "Your house?" "No, this is our house." Daniel blinked. "I think you're mistaken. I bought this place from the bank 3 weeks ago. The deed is in my name." The woman, whose tone carried both anger and pain, shook her head. "The bank had no right to sell it. This home has been in my family for years. We're not leaving again." Before Daniel could answer, her husband came down the stairs. Tall and visibly tired, he said firmly, "We're not moving out. You'll have to call the sheriff." Daniel stood frozen in disbelief. It didn't feel real. He looked around, the furniture, the boxes, the family photos already sitting on the mantel. It was like they had lived there for weeks. That night, Daniel sat in his truck at the end of the driveway, watching the lights flicker through the windows. He called the real estate office, who confirmed everything again. The foreclosure was processed legally. The home was his, but something about the woman's voice lingered in his mind. She sounded desperate, not deceitful. The next morning, Daniel came back with the county sheriff. The woman, whose name he soon learned was Karen, stood on the porch, tears in her eyes. The sheriff reviewed Daniel's documents, then turned to her. "Ma'am, this property now legally belongs to Mr. Harris, unless you can show ownership. You'll need to vacate." Karen's voice broke. "You can't do this. We were supposed to get another chance. The bank promised us more time." Her husband tried to argue, but it was no use. The law was clear. Daniel stood there, guilt twisting in his chest as Karen's children quietly carried boxes to their truck. The youngest, a teenage girl, clutched a framed photo to her chest before she left. Karen turned to Daniel and said, "You may own this house, but it will never be yours." Some places don't forget who they belong to. The truck rolled away, leaving behind silence that felt heavier than any storm. For weeks, Daniel worked alone. He fixed the roof, sanded the floors, painted the walls. But no matter what he did, the house felt empty, like it didn't want him there. He found reminders of the family everywhere. A drawing taped inside a kitchen cabinet that said "Home Sweet Home." A wooden cross nailed behind the garden fence. A faded family photo tucked behind the fireplace. He started wondering if he'd done the right thing. Yes, the papers said it was his, but morally, spiritually, it felt like he'd taken someone else's dream. Then one evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, he heard footsteps on the gravel outside. When he opened the door, Karen stood there again. Her eyes were red, but her voice was calm. "I'm not here to fight," she said softly. "I just wanted to walk through. One last time, please." Daniel hesitated. Then, quietly, he stepped aside. "Go ahead." She walked through the house slowly, touching the walls like she was greeting old friends. Her fingers traced the carved initials on the staircase, the edge of the kitchen counter. The doorway marked with pencil lines showing her children's heights over the years. When she reached the living room, she stopped. "We built this fireplace ourselves," she said, smiling faintly through tears. "It was the first project my husband and I ever did together." Daniel stayed silent. He could see the pain in her eyes, a mixture of grief, nostalgia, and love. She turned toward him. "We didn't choose to leave. We fell behind after my husband lost his job. We tried to catch up, but the bank didn't care. One day, they just locked us out. That was our whole life in this house, gone overnight." For the first time, Daniel truly understood. To him, this was a project. To her, it was family, history, and heart. After she left, Daniel couldn't shake her words. He sat in the empty kitchen for hours, staring at the walls. Finally, he made a decision that surprised even himself. The next morning, he drove into town and found Karen working at a small diner. She looked up, startled to see him. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. I was wondering if you'd like to help me fix the place up. You know it better than anyone." She stared at him, stunned. "You let me do that?" "Why not?" Daniel said with a smile. "Maybe this house needs both of us." And so, slowly, something new began. On weekends, Karen came up with her kids. Her son, Tyler, helped Daniel with the tools. Her daughter, Lily, painted the porch. Karen cleaned, cooked, and showed Daniel all the places that once held their memories. The hidden garden path, the swing that used to hang from the cherry tree, the rock where her kids carved their names. It was awkward at first, but the tension faded. Laughter returned to the house. They worked together, shared meals, and told stories late into the evening. Karen talked about the years they'd spent there, the storms that had cut the power for days, the family dinners by candlelight, the summer nights spent watching fireflies from the porch. And for the first time, Daniel stopped feeling like the owner and started feeling like a part of something bigger. Weeks turned into months, and the house transformed. The walls were fresh, the floors shone, and the garden bloomed again. One afternoon, Karen handed Daniel a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. It said, "Thank you for letting me come home again. Even for a little while. You didn't have to, but you did. You reminded me that kindness still exists." At the bottom, she had written, "This house will always be a part of both our stories." Daniel looked up, speechless. "You'll always be welcome here," he said quietly. By the time winter came, Karen's family had found a small rental nearby, but they still visited often. Some nights, Daniel would sit by the fire with them, laughing like old friends. He had bought a house to find solitude, but instead, he found connection. One evening, as they all sat around a fire pit in the yard, Karen's husband, Greg, spoke for the first time. "You didn't have to do all this," he said quietly. "You could have just shut the door and called it done." Daniel smiled. "Maybe I could have, but then I would have missed the chance to do something good." Greg nodded, his eyes full of gratitude. "You gave us closure. You gave us hope." That night, as Daniel looked up at the stars over the mountains, he realized something. He had bought that house thinking it would bring him peace, but what it gave him instead was purpose. He didn't just fix a house. He helped mend hearts, including his own. Years later, People who passed through the valley often saw the house glowing softly against the hillside, the porch lights twinkling, laughter spilling out into the night. They'd see Daniel tending the garden, Karen's kids helping with the fence, and know that something special had happened there. A broken past had been rebuilt, not by ownership, but by compassion. And whenever someone asked Daniel about it, he'd smile and say, "I bought a mountain home to fix up. But in the end, it fixed me." Because sometimes home isn't a place you find. It's something or someone you build it with. Thank you for watching Silent Stories Updates. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories about redemption, kindness, and the beauty of starting over.